This is Wrestling with Wrestling's Past and Present. I'm Tim Kurt.
And I'm Roland Fulis.
And today it is all about the Royal Rumble as we prepare for Royal Rumble 2020. We thought we'd take a little next couple weeks to do a couple Royal Rumble shows for you.
Yeah, we wanted to get you guys on the road to WrestleMania, and the road to WrestleMania starts with the Rumble, so we figured we'd give you a double dose of the Rumble. Next week, we're going to do the first Royal Rumble, and we're going to preview 2020's Rumble, but we figured, why don't we do something a little bit Rumble-esque for this week, too, and go with 20 years setting them. We'll do last year's Royal Rumble 2019 and 1999's Royal Rumble.
Yes, absolutely. So let's get started with the past part of the program. Let's talk about the 1999 Royal Rumble. This featured 6 matches on the main card and one dark match and 2 Sunday Night Heat matches.
That was back when in 1999 they actually had a show that was on network television before, instead of the ever unpopular pre-show that they have on the WWE network. I know that when there's a big pay-per-view, whether it's a Rumble, WrestleMania, I don't even watch the pre-show. Do you?
I don't know. Not really.
It's no point.
No. But we'll touch on the dark matches and the Heat matches real quick here. The first match, you had Christian defeating Jeff Hardy in a singles match. This timed in at 11 minutes. Now, back then, they weren't really single stars. They were more tag team stars at this point.
Christian was still in the Brood.
Yes.
With Edge and Gangrel. And Jeff Hardy, obviously, everybody knows who Jeff Hardy is. So.
Then on Heat, you had the Job Squad. That's a name from the past. Mm-hmm. They were represented by Bob Holly and Scorpio here, defeating, before they were Too Cool, they were originally called Too Much, which is Brian Christopher and Scott Taylor. So
which is Scotty Too Hottie.
Scotty Too Hottie and Grandmaster Sexay is Brian Christopher.
Yep.
So you had that. And then you also had Mankind defeated Mabel by disqualification. This was kind of a quote-unquote warm-up match that Vince McMahon put together prior to, because Mankind's going to wrestle later on against The Rock. And we'll get into that match. But that match is kind of noteworthy for some unfortunate reasons.
We've actually brought that up in one of our previous podcasts.
Sure.
There's an iconic moment in there that is, we both rewatched the pay-per-view this week, and it's still hard to watch now.
Yeah, it's really hard, but we'll get to that in a little bit. First match on the actual show went about 12 minutes long. You had the Big Boss Man defeated Road Dogg. I actually thought this match was pretty good. I thought it was kind of a back-and-forth match, maybe a little slow-paced for me, but I thought it was pretty good. I was a little surprised, though, that Big Boss Man actually got the win.
Yeah, Road Dogg was the hardcore champion going into the match, and they were making mention on commentary about how it wasn't for the championship and that it was not hardcore rules. So it was actually a wrestling match. It was a pretty good wrestling match.
Yeah, Big Boss Man, by the way, was part of the was one half of the tag team champions as well, along with Ken Shamrock.
In the corporation.
Team Corporate.
Yeah, Team Corporate, and then you had obviously Road Dogg being in DX and one half of the Outlaws. So,
speaking of Ken Shamrock, he was in our next match. He defeated Billy Gunn by submission in a little under 15 minutes. This one, the storyline here was Billy Gunn mooned Ken Shamrock's sister, and that didn't sit well with Ken.
Yeah, Ken kind of snapped and attacked him then, and then attacked him on Raw the following week, and it led to the match at the Royal Rumble. And again, all the matches we're going to talk about today, I'm actually surprised at how well they went off. They were actually pretty good matches. I mean, I think for wrestling, there was a lot of really good matches on the 99 Rumble.
I agree. I was surprised at how well I thought the show was. And I don't know, part of it might be because it's nostalgia. This is kind of my growing up period.
Same here.
And so it's kind of what I like most. It's the era that I like the most. But so that might be clouding my judgment a little bit, but I thought the wrestling on the show was really good.
Yeah, I mean, especially for some of the names. I mean, Ken Shamrock, for all intents and purposes, was an Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's funny to go back and watch. He actually could wrestle pretty well for a guy that was, you know, a UFC type person to come in and wrestle. It's like I said, to go back and watch it, it's surprising how good he actually was at WWE wrestling.
So our next match was for the European Championship. You had XPac getting the win over Gangrel. Again, I thought it was another solid match.
Yeah, I'm glad that it wasn't too long. I mean, it might have been. Yeah. It could have been a little bit longer, maybe. It was kind of. I mean, it wasn't a squash match, but it was a quick match. It was about 6 minutes.
6 minutes long.
XPac being the champion, he retained over Gangrel, and X-Pac, all the years I've seen him perform, I don't know if I've ever seen him have a bad match.
No.
X-Pac is probably one of the more underrated actual wrestlers that they had back in the day, even when he was, 6 in WCW and the NWO, and the 1-2-3 Kid before that. Sean Waltman, X-Pac, I don't remember him having a bad match.
I can't think of one either. Next up, this one was kind of a little odd. You had Sable defeating Luna Vachon in a strap match for the WWF Women's title. This one about 4.5 minutes. Before the match began, Sable was supposedly had a chronic back injury, so Shane McMahon came out in support of Luna and said that Sable's going to have to forfeit. Sable came out kind of favoring her back and said, "Ring the bell," and here we go.
Yeah, and it was a strap match that it was just there.
Yeah.
It was probably the worst match on the card. It wasn't terrible, but it also didn't really have anything. It was okay. Strap matches are tough to do anyways, but when you have two women in a strap match, it's kind of just... and I'm not trying to say that I'm against women having it, but at that time, you don't have the performers you have now that could do more. So they were kind of limited being, strapped to each other of what they could do. There was one point where Luna got whipped off the ropes and barely even touched the ropes because the strap, when Sable threw into the ropes, she barely made the ropes but came running right there. So they made the best of it, and like I said, it wasn't a great match. It ended by Luna actually put Sable on her back with the strap and went and touched all. In the strap match, you have to touch all four corners. That's how you win the strap match. And as Luna was touching the corners, Sable was doing it behind her, and she didn't see it. So when they both got to 3, then the stalker supposedly came out of the crowd and decked Luna, and it allowed Sable to touch the 4th corner, and that's how it ended.
Win the match, yeah. Was the stalker Tori?
It looked like Tori.
That's what I was.
Yeah,
that's
it
what I was
did. It
thinking.
looked like Tori. I couldn't really tell. He didn't really, but when she got up on the apron, it did look like Tori. Yeah.
And then the next match was an I Quit match for the WWF title. The Rock defeated Mankind. Yeah, like we mentioned earlier, this one was kind of hard to watch in some points.
Yeah, towards the end, especially the match itself. During the match, the setup for everything was really good. Again, The Rock and Mankind, 2 really good performers. But after Mankind, there was a spot where Mankind ended up going through the electronic area, and sparks flew, and they lost their lights and all that stuff. After that happened, it went downhill quick.
Yeah.
It was very gruesome. I would recommend, if you're unsure of what we're discussing and you want to see it, to go back and watch it, but viewer discretion advised, because the last 10 minutes of that match were really brutal.
Yeah, just The Rock handcuffed Mankind and just did at least a dozen chair shots right to the head, and these aren't love tap chair shots.
No, and actually, from what I remember of hearing, since then, I've heard that Mankind was actually kind of upset at how The Rock laid him in. They wanted them to be real, but Mankind was actually towards the end was kind of upset by how it went off, that he hit him so many times in the weight. I mean, he wanted to be hit, but Mankind's obviously a tough guy and can take. He fell through the Hell in the Cell, for Christ's sake. So it's not like he can't take a shot, but you can't protect yourself when your hands are strapped, handcuffed behind your back.
Yeah.
So I know that there was a little bit of animosity afterwards that I had heard. I can't remember who, what story I read or who told me that, but I know Mick wasn't real happy with how it went towards the end, because there was some where Mick was trying to not get hit in the head. He was ducking his head and trying to get him to hit him in the back, and Rock was still clocking him right in the head. Yeah. And so obviously you could tell that Mankind trying to avoid the headshots, because he could tell he was probably getting pretty messed up, getting his brain scrambled and stuff. But like I said, we mentioned it in a previous podcast. It is probably one of the most gruesome things you're ever going to see. It's just hard to watch. You cringe every time he hits him in the head.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just and he's bleeding at this point too.
Yeah.
It's hard to see it because he has the mask on.
And it's worth saying too that match actually ended by Mick Foley not actually quitting. They had the recording of him saying "I quit," yelling "I quit." One of the promos leading up to it play over the loudspeaker, so it was a setup to begin with of how they were going to get him to quit. So I mean, there was a lot there, and like I said, they wanted The Rock to lay him in, but he might have went a little overboard. I think
it went a little too far. And then our main event is the Royal Rumble match. 30-man Royal Rumble match. This went a little under an hour, about 56.5 minutes. Mr. McMahon won by eliminating Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Those were the number 1 and number 2 entrants in the Royal Rumble that stuck around till the very end. And I say stuck around for half the match. Neither one of them were in the match.
And a little bit of the storyline throughout this whole match was there was a $100,000 bounty on whoever could eliminate Stone Cold Steve Austin. There was a point in the match where Vince and Stone Cold brawled in the back, and I don't know why they chose the women's restroom to set him up, but he lured him into the women's restroom, and the corporation beat him up. And for a moment, Stone Cold was taking on an ambulance, but of course we know he's not going to go to the hospital.
Right, and then we mentioned Mabel earlier. There was a point in that match where he entered the Rumble at number 11. He attacked one of the headbangers, Mosh, and entered the Rumble. He cleaned house, and then after that, the lights go out, and there's the Ministry they eliminate him, take him over the top rope, bring him to the back, and that's actually notable because that's when Mabel becomes Viscera.
Yes.
They kidnap him, and they say, Undertaker had said there was going to be a sacrifice that night, and you see that. But the nice thing about that is when they brought him out, they put him in the hearse. That's when Stone Cold came back in the ambulance, driving the ambulance. Vince McMahon was on commentary at that time. And Vince's acting when he is like scared is awesome.
I know.
The big gulps, and you can see he's like, Austin's back. And like I said, that was essentially halfway through the Rumble. So I mean, there was about half the Rumble, and neither one of them were even in the match.
Mm-hmm. As far as Royal Rumble goes, I think this one kind of stands out for me because there's an actual story to it. Because you had the Mabel issue, but this is a story of the $100,000 bounty. It added something to the Royal Rumble. It added a storyline to it that a lot of Royal Rumbles don't have. A lot of it's just a mixture of guys put together to have a match. This one, there was actually a story behind it.
Yeah, and when Vince was on commentary with Michael Cole and the King, they kept asking him what he thought about, if this person won the bounty or if this, Vince finally said, I don't care who does it, somebody's, Yeah. And then he was like, oh, you guys, Jerry the King Lawler actually asked him once, well, if they eliminate him, if these two eliminate him, would they split it? He's like, I don't care what they do with it as long as they eliminate it. So, it definitely was a nice wrinkle. Also in this, too, you see Kane come in, clean house. He came in at number 18. He then eliminates Goldust and the Godfather, and then out come the orderlies with the straitjacket to try to take him away, restrain him and take him away, and then he eliminates himself. He knocks a couple orderlies over, and then he starts chasing them off, but he goes over the top rope to eliminate himself. So, it would have been interesting if Kane had been in there longer to see what he could have done actually in the Rumble, because, he's historically one of the better guys at staying in a Rumble as we go through the years. But yeah, another wrinkle there too that they had brought him to the asylum and all that stuff, and had to they wanted to put him back. So that was kind of another interesting part in the Rumble too.
So overall, I thought the show was actually really, really well. When I watched it back this week, it was a lot better than I was expecting it to. I would agree with the Sable Luna match, probably the worst match on the card. I thought the Royal Rumble itself was actually probably one of the more entertaining matches.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'd probably give it a solid 8.5 for the show. I thought it was really well.
Yeah, I'd say 8, 7.5, 8. I also want to point out too that the 30th entrant in the Rumble was China.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
I wanted to point that out too before we finished, closed the book on this. It was interesting because China had won the right to be the 30th entrant in the Rumble, and she actually eliminated Mark Henry of all, because Mark Henry was sexual chocolate, and they had a storyline there too. Stone Cold ends up eliminating China in pretty quick fashion after that. But still, it was another wrinkle that you really hadn't seen before of a woman being in the men's Royal Rumble.
So, there's a lot going on in this Royal Rumble. They jam-packed, you had the Kane thing, the Mabel thing, China, the bounty. So there was a lot going on.
Well, the Billy Gunn Shamrock thing continued into the Rumble. Billy Gunn comes out with one boot on. And a hurt ankle. And storytelling-wise, it was really good.
It was a really good Royal Rumble. All right, so that concludes the past part of the program. Let's transfer to the present. The 2019 Royal Rumble match taking place just about a year ago. We're going to run down the pre-show matches real quick here. You had Bobby Roode and Chad Gable, now known as Shorty G.
And Robert Roode.
Defeated Scott Dawson and Razor of the AOP with Drake Maverick. That kind of an interesting tag team there.
Yeah, I think Dash Wilder was injured at the time,
so.
I believe. So they had to try to find something for Dawson to do, I guess, and they decided we'll have him go with one half of the AOP. And that's why it was on the pre-show. Because it was just a thrown-together thing to get guys on the show.
The next match on the pre-show was for the United States title. You had Shinsuke Nakamura defeated Rusev for the title.
Yeah, and that was that would be notable too because Rusev lost by running into Lana, knocking her off the apron, hurting her ankle, and then Nakamura would hit the Kinshasa while he was up against the ropes. But that would be notable later on in the night for the Women's Rumble, as we'll cover. Yep. But that was when the storyline started with Lana for that. So just try to remember that when we go to the Women's Rumble. It
could have also been the precursor for their divorce too.
Maybe. Her and Bob.
God, I hope that storyline ends soon.
It still hasn't.
It has not ended.
No, it's getting more and more intertwined, and it's not good. Still not good. At least Eric Bischoff wasn't the minister of the of the wedding. But that can end any day now, and I'd be happy with it. So.
Next up, we have a fatal four-way match for the Cruiserweight title. You had Buddy Murphy getting the win over Kalisto, Akira Tozawa, and Hideo Itami in about 12 minutes there.
And that was back when they were still building 205 Live as a thing. I mean, I know it's still a thing, but they were really pushing the Cruiserweights then. They've kind of gone away from it a little bit. And Buddy Murphy, for all intents and purposes, now, even then, was still an impressive wrestler. They kind of shuffled the deck a little bit and pushed him to the back, but now he's starting to shine through. He just recently joined the Monday Night Messiah and AOP. Buddy Murphy, that was the start of him showing people in the company what he could do.
Absolutely. Yeah, all four of those guys, really talented workers. Especially, Kalisto has had a really successful career as well. Mm-hmm. All right, so now we get to the actual show.
Mind you, this main card of the show was almost 5 hours long.
5 hours long.
And you had 3 matches on the pre-show, and there was a 2-hour pre-show. So if you sat down and watched this whole thing, it would have been 7 hours.
7 hours, yeah.
That's a lot, guys. I don't care what anybody says, what wrestling fan you are, that's a lot.
Compared to Royal Rumble 1999, that was 2 hours and 45 minutes, I believe, for the whole show.
And they did a lot of storytelling in it, and it was over, and you didn't have to worry about waiting for the other half of the show at that point.
Yep. So the first match, you had Asuka defeating Becky Lynch for the SmackDown Women's title. Becky Lynch was really big here still, as she is today. So it might be a little surprising that Asuka got the win. Asuka kind of was coming over her slump after losing to the previous WrestleMania, losing to Charlotte.
Yeah, losing her undefeated streak.
So she was kind of in a slump afterwards.
And this is coming off Survivor Series where Becky Lynch wasn't able to perform because she got hit by Nia Jax and lost her chance to face Ronda Rousey. And it was weird to see how they were going to go about it because Asuka got kind of thrown into the storyline. And it was a really good match. I rewatched this actually today, and I was very surprised at how long the match was, but it wasn't a boring match at all. No. It was action the whole time. It was a very good match.
Yeah, it was about 17 minutes long, just to kind of give you
it was one of the, I think it was the longest singles match besides... Yeah, it was the longest singles match on the card besides Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles, which we'll cover later. But I mean, it was they got a lot of time, and it was a very good match. Sure.
Next up, you had The Miz and Shane McMahon defeating The Bar, Cesaro and Sheamus. I always enjoy Shane McMahon matches. I don't know why. I mean, they could be really bad matches. I don't know. I'm always going to enjoy it. I'm just a big Shane McMahon mark.
Yeah, no, I like Shane too because you don't think of him as the typical wrestler, and he can do a lot of things that some wrestlers can't do. For a guy that's not a trained wrestler, some of the stuff he does is like the ending of that match. He hit a shooting star press, to win the match. And there's I bet you there's wrestlers right now in the WWE and AEW that can't do a shooting star press, but Shane McMahon can do it, and he's not even a trained wrestler. So
I always enjoy the team of. I mean, it didn't last all that long, but The Miz and Shane, I thought they had good chemistry. I thought they made for an entertaining team.
Right, and it was to set up their feud at WrestleMania. That was the beginning of it. The following month at the next pay-per-view, they would lose the titles, and Shane would turn on them. And they were playing up the card that Shane was a big fan. Mike Mizanin's dad was a big fan of Shane McMahon and thought that Shane McMahon could elevate the Miz's career and make his dad proud of the Miz. Like that was the storyline. And the big thing I take away from that is when Shane McMahon afterwards calls him a baked potato. Like after all this storyline ends, he says that his dad was a baked potato.
Yeah.
Which I thought was funny. I mean, you hear insults all the time, but he's like a baked potato. I'm like, okay, all right, you win.
All right, moving right along here, the next match, you had Ronda Rousey defeating Sasha Banks for the Raw Women's title. I'm not a huge Ronda Rousey fan, so this match was kind of...
It was just there.
There for me.
It wasn't a bad match. Same with like the Luna and Sable match from the 99 Rumble. I mean, it wasn't that type of match, but again, it was just there. It wasn't a terrible match. It told a story. Rousey was a fan of Sasha, and she kind of handpicked her to, be the one to get this opportunity to face her, and the whole 4 horsewomen thing between Rousey's 4 horsewomen of MMA, and then Sasha Banks is one of the 4 horsewomen from the NXT developmental with Charlotte and Bayley and Becky Lynch. So there was a little bit of storyline there. But yeah, again, it was just there. It wasn't a bad match, but I mean, yeah, same thing. Rousey, for what she does and what she's done in the WWE, I was never really the biggest fan of her either.
Yeah.
She's a great MMA fighter, don't get me wrong. It's just they kind of did what they did with Roman, and just kind of like shove her down your throat, and she never really got the chance to win the crowd over on her own.
Then after that, we had the 30-woman Royal Rumble match.
Only the second one in history. Last year was the first one. The 2018 would have been the first Women's Rumble, so this is the second one in history.
This is a long match, too. It's an hour and 12 minutes long. Becky Lynch won by last eliminating Charlotte.
Mind you, Becky Lynch was not even in the Women's Royal Rumble to start the night.
Nope, this going back to the whole Lana thing. Lana was supposed to be in the Royal Rumble, but she could not continue because of her ankle injury.
Yeah, she was supposed to enter at number 28, and she kind of limped halfway down the ring, and it took so much time that when Nia Jax came out at number 29, she actually attacked her, so she couldn't get in the ring, which then led to the WWE agents coming out, Fit Finlay being one of them. Becky Lynch comes out after and begs Fit Finlay to just let her take her spot. And Fit Finlay at first said, no, you can't. And then finally, he just said, go for it. Which I think is funny because who's Fit Finlay to say you can just
enter the match?
I mean, it would have been better if they had, somebody, Stephanie McMahon, somebody that was in charge at the time. But it was definitely a unique storyline. But it's funny because they did the same thing essentially with Mabel in the 99 Rumble.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where they seem to do that once or twice a year where they have somebody get hurt, somebody get attacked, and they take a spot. So it was a good way to get her to lose the match earlier in the day, but still enter the Rumble.
Curtis Axel still hasn't been eliminated from that Royal Rumble for how many years ago
That's true. He never made it in. That's true. Good point.
All right. The next match is a singles match for the WWE title. Daniel Bryan defeating AJ Styles in just under 25 minutes.
That was a very good pure wrestling match. For anybody that is a fan of either one of those wrestlers, they can put on a good show with pretty much anybody. And Daniel Bryan had just become the new Daniel Bryan at the time. AJ Styles was still the face, the champion, and Daniel Bryan had just had his heel turn. And the match actually would end with Eric Rowan coming out. So this is the first time you see Eric Rowan side with Daniel Bryan, and he would attack. The referee got bumped, and he would attack AJ Styles, give him the Iron Claw, which Tom Phillips called a choke slam. And that's how the match ended. It's too bad I know they booked it to be that way, but it's too bad they let a really good match end that way. It would have been nice if they could have had a clean win. I don't know how you do it, but you could have had Bryan kick out. AJ kick out after Rowan interfered, and then you go for a bit.
Sure.
But it was too bad they ended it that way. But it was a very long match, so maybe they didn't want to add any more time to it. Because, it was a 25-minute match. It was a good match, though, back and forth action. They're both very good, talented wrestlers. So you would expect nothing less between the two of them.
No, there's no way that could be a bad match.
No.
No way. Next up, you had Brock Lesnar defeating Finn Balor by submission. This was for the Universal title. For me, it's your typical Brock Lesnar match. He's, Finn's going to try a valiant effort to, do the best he can, but Brock's going to come through in the end here. He won with the Kimura lock.
Yeah, the only time you see Brock Lesnar lose to someone smaller than him is Seth Rollins.
Yeah.
Twice. But Finn Balor, I remember that match being the match where Brock would be put into the corner of the announcer's table in his nether regions. He got kicked into the corner of the table, and the whole match he was selling, his downstairs area hurting. So I don't know how real that actually was if he did end up catching the corner of it, but if it did, he did a great job of selling it because he looked visually uncomfortable that whole match after that. Yeah. Even afterwards, holding up the belt, he kept reaching, and it seemed like he either sold it great or he did actually hit the corner somewhere down there, and it was bothering him. But it's notable to say that you have Brock Lesnar, this monster. He didn't F5 and pick up the win. He didn't pin him. Like you said, he used the Kimura lock to get Balor to tap out, which was a different wrinkle into a Brock Lesnar match. Usually Brock Lesnar just comes out, suplexes the hell out of you, hits an F5 or 6, and the match is over. Yep. And it was a nice way to have a different ending to a typical Brock Lesnar match.
And then our final match of this long pay-per-view is the 30-man Royal Rumble match. Went about 57.5 minutes. Seth Rollins won by last eliminating the monster among men, Braun Strowman.
And this one's notable for the number 10 entrant of it being Jeff Jarrett.
Yep.
Which was kind of neat. Elias came out, and then the second entrant was Jeff Jarrett, which was kind of neat. You had names like Kurt Angle in it. Yeah. You had, you also had, people that from NXT that kind of had their first experience in the WWE pay-per-view, like Johnny Gargano and guys like that. So it was nice to see, a couple of old faces, a couple of new faces, and the whole the thing that they did this year in that Rumble was whoever won the mixed match challenge got the 30th entrant spot for both Rumbles. So Carmella entered last for the women's Rumble, and R-Truth was supposed to enter last for the men's Rumble, but he was attacked by Nia Jax, and Nia Jax enters the men's Rumble. So again, another tie-in to the 1999 Rumble where you have a woman in the Rumble match, in the men's Rumble match.
Yeah.
So it was a very, very good, I think, match with someone. Like I said, it was kind of nice. For me, whenever they have a Royal Rumble, I like to see who they're going to sneak in. Somebody that you don't expect, like a Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of cool because you had Elias starting off, so they had the musical connection there.
Right.
So I thought that was a kind of a good way to start the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, and then you had, your normal monster spots in there where, Drew McIntyre eliminated 5 people, 4 people, Braun Strowman eliminated 5. So you have, your typical runs of where people eliminate, a good amount of people. But, there wasn't really that much of a story to this one. Like you said, there was way more story to the 1999 Rumble. This one was just, whoever wins is going to go on to WrestleMania, and that's all. But there was no real story told in this Rumble compared to you can't beat the storytelling of the 99 Rumble.
No. If you're looking for awesome storytelling, go back and watch the 99 Royal Rumble match. Watch the pay-per-view, but in particular, watch the Royal Rumble match because, again, that's a demonstration of really good storytelling.
Yeah, and if you're ever in a place where you need some WWE trivia, who eliminated Nia Jax from the Rumble? Rey Mysterio. Of all people. You have Braun Strowman, you have all these big people, and Rey Mysterio eliminates, Nia Jax.
And fun fact, we're going to get into this next week, but when we cover the first Royal Rumble, but the first person ever eliminated in a Royal Rumble match, do you know who it is?
I do not.
The Natural, Bush Reed.
Wow.
So
that'll come up again. So anybody that listens to this, you'll know the answer next week when we discuss it. So let's see if you can remember that.
Yes, remember that.
But like I said, it wasn't bad. It was long, if anything, the whole show. It doesn't live up, I don't think, to the 99 Rumble.
No.
But it still wasn't a terrible show. I'd say, 7 region, somewhere in there.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was going to give it a 7 myself.
And, Rollins ends up winning the Rumble, and he actually entered at number 10. So, I mean, he was in the Rumble for 43 minutes. So, usually you have somebody that's in there for a long period of time. And, it seems like at least half the time that person wins it. Mm-hmm. So, Rollins was the guy. He was in there for 43 minutes, and he earned it.
Absolutely. So, that is our show today on the 1999 and 2019 Royal Rumble. So as we stated, next week we're going to talk about the first ever Royal Rumble, which took place on 1988. And we'll also give you our predictions on the 2020 Royal Rumble. And until then, I am Tim Kurt.
And I'm Roland Fulis.
And this is Wrestling with Wrestling Past and Present.